few people. Anybody not hear of Cardano? Or third generation blockchain? Ooh, we have some new people in the audience, great. So to understand Cardano, you have to understand where Cardano came from. Cardano came from Bitcoin and it came from Ethereum. So back in the day, we had this notion of a digital currency. And for a real long time, since the 1980s, there was this goal of saying, can we create something that moves as quickly as email, but isn't centralized? And it turned out that that was a really hard problem. We saw a lot of candidate solutions like eCash and DigiCash and so forth, and tons of companies formed around it, like PayPal and eGold, but they always relied on central trust or central authority. So then suddenly, Bitcoin came out in 2009, and it really was the first generation of a new class of technology. A class of technology that relies upon a collective delusion. That's the way I like to describe it. So what is that collective delusion? That some token, constrained by some protocol, is worth something, even though it's not backed by anything. And that seems crazy, until you start thinking about yen, and dollars, and euros, and all these other things. They're also collective delusions. The law is a collective delusion. Democratic mandate is a collective delusion. That's the way the world works. Governments themselves, they're not real, they're just made up of people. And people decide that this is valuable, this person has power, this person doesn't. So the great experiment of the first generation of cryptocurrencies was to infect the world with a fever that a token that has no reason to be worth anything other than the fact that it's scarce and it's constrained by some math ought to be worth something. And guess what? It took 4 years for that to actually set foot and nest itself into the collective consciousness of the world. It went up, it went down, but nobody really cared. Then right around 2013, then people started caring. But the problem is that you couldn't really do much with it. You see, I could send something to Alice or Bob, they can send me something. But what happens when we have a complex financial relationship? What happens when we have a contract? Mow my lawn, fix my roof, and I give you $100 of value. That's a simple financial arrangement that everybody in the world does 1,000 times a year. Well, guess what? You can't do that with Bitcoin. It's not easy. There's people who have spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money trying to embed simple, single-purpose things into the Bitcoin blockchain. So in 2013, Vitalik Buterin and others, myself included, started a conversation about how do we add in complexity? How do we add programmability? The analogy we like to use when we entered the second generation was that it's like when JavaScript came to the web browser. What happened? You got Facebook, you got Google, you got Gmail, you got all these amazing things. You got YouTube that you could not do if you didn't have some sort of rich functionality in the browser. And similarly, when we brought smart contracts to the blockchain world, it allowed all these wonderful companies from Virgo on down, to Consensus, to IOHK, to start imagining what should be the future of financial relationships. What should be the future of property, of identity, of voting, all of these things. How do we take the same rules that are now constraining our money, that collective delusion of auditability and time stamping and immutability, these things, to say that nobody can come in for political purposes and tinker with it or give a bailout, take that and put that into everything else of society. That's what the smart contract did. It allowed us to dream again. It allowed every single person in the world to actually imagine a system better than the systems that they live in. Now, of course, Ethereum was a crazy idea. Nobody took us seriously. My God, the first place we ever rented, we had to pay all the cash up front because nobody thought we were credible. Man, they should have taken Ether. Well, anyway, Ethereum became successful. Ethereum worked. It was pretty magical. But now we're in kind of a crossroads where we as a community, we as a movement, have proven that you can coordinate people on a global scale to believe in something else. We as a movement have proven that we have enough knowledge and technical capabilities to start reevaluating how the things that we've inherited from our fathers, like how our governments work and how our economies work and how property works and democratic mandates work. We've gotten to a point where we've proven we could reprogram these things. But we have this last mile that we have to solve. The reality is that these systems simply do not scale to millions to billions of people. That there's not going to be just one of these systems. There's going to be thousands of them. Because the world's a very diverse place. Is there just one language? Is there just one culture? Is there just one country? For heaven's sake, is there just one sports team? For God's sakes. Of course, the Denver Broncos are great. But there are apparently more football teams, go figure. And so as a consequence, you also have to think about the system itself. How do these systems talk to each other, move data about each other? What metadata is required? What's attribution look like in these types of things? And then finally, this is the biggest problem, and the one that's going to take the longest to solve, because we as humans haven't solved this one. The sustainability component. How do we build a protocol that has enough governance built into it that it actually knows how to pay for its own bills? That actually you can come up with some reasonable way forward before we change the protocol, so that you don't have Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash and Ethereum Classic and Ethereum Classic, and Bitcoin Cash. So you actually have some stability. You actually have some form of a democratic mandate behind the direction that you want to go. Because the reality is, I can't go to Ethiopia, I can't go to Ghana, I can't come here to Vietnam and say with a straight face, this technology is going to change your country. Oh, and by the way, there's going to be 4 different flavors of it because we can't get along next year. That just doesn't work. So these are the 3 great challenges that now remain for us as a collective field. And it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're a Bitcoin core developer. It doesn't matter if you're Vitalik with Ethereum, or Dash, or IOTA, or Dan Larimer with EOS, or myself with Cardano. To earn the right to actually change the world, we have to actually solve these problems, one way or another. And that's what we recognized in 2015. We said scalability, interoperability, and sustainability. These are the 3 pillars that if we get them right, this will be the next internet. This is going to change everything. So then we asked, how do you solve these problems? How do we actually do that? What does that look like? Do I just go off the mountaintop, make my beard even longer? Maybe someplace that's really cold, like a cabin. Do it Russian mathematician style so they solve some topological problem. No! No matter how smart any one person is, guess what? No one's smarter than the group. No one's smarter than the world. So we realized that the only way we were going to solve this problem, these 3 big problems, was to bring the world together. In particular, types of worlds together. One world that has been ignored, maligned, abused, and recently even threatened to be sued is the academic world. Isn't it a funny thing that there's a group of people who have the luxury to think of time, no real life expectations? Your parents always say you got to get a job. Well, they're the group of people that found a way to survive without getting a real job. That's an amazing thing. And those people, because of that time, that luxury that society has afforded them, have become domain experts in programming language theory, and economics, and game theory, and cryptography, and distributed systems. You name it, there's somebody for it. And they even have their own matching scores, like the H-index, and prizes, like the Turing Prize, and so forth. So you can even know who's who, and who's good and who's not. Yet, despite the fact that society spends collectively hundreds of billions of dollars globally to give these people that luxury, no one bothered to go and ask them, hey, we would like you guys to come on board and tell us where we should go. So one of the first goals of the Cardano project was asking, how do we build bridges into the university world? Not just one university, not just one PhD, not just one professor, but rather the entire community, the entire computer science community. And then get them talking to lawyers for law and policy, and get them talking to economists. That's the first major step, is bring the universities in. So guess what we had to do? I had to go to conferences, and I had to go to universities, and I had to go with a straight face tell them that we're going to work together somehow, some way. So we went to Tokyo Tech, went to University of Edinburgh, we went to University of Athens, I talked to people from University of Illinois, all around. Dozens and dozens and dozens, and they never took me seriously in the beginning. It was very hard. But little by little, we built some reputation and some credibility, and guess what? We started writing papers, and those papers started going through the peer review process. And after they went through the peer review process, we built a bit of credibility. We built a bit of relationship with everyone. And now we're in a position where we have the largest group of cryptocurrency researchers in the world working on Cardano. All across the world, in many different time zones. I'm going to Israel in April for Eurocrypt. Prior to that, I was at Crypto. I attend about 3 or 4 academic conferences a year presenting IOHK research. Just last week, we had our Tokyo Tech guys over at Financial Crypto in the Caribbean. Such a sacrifice they had to make. So, that was the first goal. Bring the academic world in. Why? Well, because the academic world is not a kind, nice, happy place. It's filled with ego, and it's filled with a lot of people that want to destroy you for their own careers. And isn't it a magical thing that I can publish a paper, and now some of the brightest people in the world, some of the smartest people in the world, are now going to try to break what I've done? Isn't that a magical thing? And I don't have to pay them. That's like intellectual slavery. It's a beautiful thing. I love it. So, we published Ouroboros and Ouroboros Praus and Scrape. And we have a treasury paper on the way, and a sidechain paper on the way, and Kaleidoscope, and soon to be Royale, and all these great papers. And we're already having deep, rich conversations with competitors and people and rivals in the space, and we've seen all kinds of protocols flow from that with competing visions and ideas, like Algorand from MIT and Snow White from Cornell. And this research is just absolutely magical and amazing. And you know, if it's better than mine, I'm going to take it, because it's all open and it's all free. So that's the power of engaging academia. It's faceless, it's in every culture, it's a great way to build relationships and create a solid foundation, and it gives independent people outside of the project a checkpoint that maybe some of the scientific claims that are being made are somewhat legitimate. See, our space has a problem. 1,000 different blockchains, 1,000 different ideas, and everybody says, I have 1 million transactions per second, and I can do this, and infinitely scalable that, and so forth. And can you read the papers? Honestly. They're specialized papers. They take quite a bit of time and training and expertise. These are not easy things. And so, instead of being intellectually dishonest and saying everything makes sense, rather we should ask, what process should we as a space follow so that the claims that people make are validated? It's a process, it's not people. Never believe in people, especially smart people, because they're smart enough to be able to lie to you well. They're smart enough to lie to themselves. They can obfuscate anything with mathematics and beautiful arguments. Kurt Gödel was one of the smartest logicians in human history. He even proved that math is forever incomplete. Dear God, think of that, how complex of a proof that is, Gödel's incompleteness theorem. Yet, he was able to convince himself in his own mind that he was being chased by Soviet spies, and he stopped eating and starved to death. Professor at Princeton, best friends with Einstein. Smart people are good at lying too. They're better than you. So, we as a space need some independent metric that allows us to know if the research we're consuming is right. And that's peer review. Everyone should do it. Is that enough? No. You have to be able to launch your chain somewhere. You have to take it somewhere. So we asked ourselves, for the Cardano project, who would benefit most? And the reality of the space is very big. It's very crowded. There's lots of stuff going on. Consensus has done a phenomenal job seeding all the major centers of the world with their adherents. It's almost like a cult at this point. They got people in New York, and Tokyo, and London, all around, singing the praise of Ethereum, the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. And they're doing a pretty good job, and I think that's great for that market. But to me, the really exciting thing, and one of the reasons why I wanted to build out the Cardano project so long ago, was this idea that we would be able to enter the developing world. Places where most people don't have bank accounts. Places where it's really difficult for you to get a remittance transaction. So if you're a mother and you send your daughter abroad, and she sends $100 of value every single week or month back, if you have to pay 10% or 15% on that transaction, your system is broken. Places where when you try to get a loan, if you can get a loan, that's 35% interest, 85% interest. This is true for many people in the world, billions of them. They have a broken financial system. So to me, there's a desire to innovate, there's a moral need to innovate, The governments are willing to work with you. You don't have to fight them tooth and nail and deal with FinCEN and the SEC and the CFTC and fight by inches only to be stonewalled by incumbents who have trillions of dollars and hundreds of years of legacy against you. It's an open field. That's why I like places like Vietnam. And that's why I like places like Cambodia. That's why I like places like Ethiopia and Nigeria. Because these countries, to compete, have to do things differently. They have to think differently. They have to approach the world with an open mindset and new eyes, just like Korea did, just like Japan did decades ago. And if they get it right, they will become superpowers. And if they're carrying the technology we've built, the philosophy we've built, that will enter the global market. Not with Charles Hoskinson behind it or IOHK behind it, but with an army of people, hundreds of millions of them, and billions of dollars of value. So to that end, how will Cardano enter these marketplaces? Well, I'm an academic by training, so I always think that there's an education solution to every problem. It's called confirmation bias. That's okay. So we're going to enter through education. And how will we do that? Well, you go to the university and you train a bunch of people on how your tech stack works. And the really good people, you hire. Then you have locals in the jurisdiction who are really passionate. They love your technology. They understand how your technology works. And they're really fired up. And you know them. You know they're credible. You know they show up every day because they pass the tests. And then with those people, you go and talk to the government. You run pilots. You say, maybe we should do property registration. Maybe we should do a voting pilot. Maybe we should do an identity system. And little by little, bottom up, you're able to build technology. It turns out that the only thing this really costs is time. The money side of it is in the hundreds of thousands to millions. We have all these projects raising hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars. But for 1/100th of that money, I can train 10,000 developers in dozens of countries all around the world. Hire them for years. And those people can then go and build dApps. They can build applications, enterprise applications, applications on Cardano, and if my platform's not the right one, then another one to solve problems that they're experiencing. Not the problems I think they're experiencing, but the problems they know they're experiencing, because that's where they're from. That's the last lesson that I've learned being an entrepreneur in the space for so long, is that no matter how smart you think you are, or what your vision happens to be for where the world needs to go, at the end of the day, this technology is not yours. Cardano is not mine. It belongs to the world. And it's all about asking, how much capability do I need to put into my system so that one day, people I've never met, people I've never interacted with, can go change the world with the things that I've built. That's what the internet did, and that's what Windows did. That's what the iPhone did. It completely changed the way the entire world worked. And no one had to ask really for permission. They were just told the rules, they were told, go do it, and they did. So that's Cardano in a nutshell. So third generation cryptocurrency, we focus on scalability. Means as people join the system, we gain more resources. We focus on interoperability. So we think about the internet of blockchains. How do you move value and information between different cryptocurrencies? And we think about sustainability. So things like treasury systems and forking protocols. So you have to have democracy on the blockchain. So there's some e-voting there. It's built with academics in the academic world. It's built with formal methods, formal languages like Haskell, even more formal languages like Isabelle. And the goal is for it to become the financial stack of the developing world. It's a crazy, insane goal and probably won't work. And that's okay, because it's fun trying. And we have met so many amazing people. I've been to 40 countries since I've started this project. I travel about 200 to 250 days a year, and we've grown from just a few people to hundreds of thousands in a very short period of time. That's a magical thing. And we're going to get somewhere really magical together. Anyway, thank you all for coming. I have about 4 minutes for questions, and that's always my favorite part. I'm sorry I don't have any more time for it. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Chris. Wow, very inspiring. I guess we have a few minutes. There were some people who asked if we could do a question. Yeah? You okay to ask?
Yeah, of course.
All right, one question or 2 questions? One individual here had a question, right?
You just pick them out.
All right. Sorry, he asked me first, boys and girls.